Hey guys, thank you for stopping by to watch another video here at alliseeisW, where we talk about stocks, Bitcoin, and finance. In today's video, I'd like to share with you my overall assessment on one Bitcoin miner stock, Riot Platform, ticker RIOT, why I believe Riot is undervalued when comparing it to a big Titan company like MicroStrategy, MSTR. I share with you my overall assessment as to whether Riot is a better buy than MSTR, or is MSTR a better buy, or should it be proxied with buying more Bitcoin. We'll go through my overall updates on the price of Bitcoin, where we are in today's market price, as well as my overall forecast as to where the top off will be for the year 2025 for Bitcoin, as well as price forecasts and fundamental updates on Riot and MicroStrategy. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate the support and love by subscribing for more related content, and please make sure to hit that like button for this video. Let's begin, guys. So first off, I wanted to just share with you the overall visual here. We're looking at Bitcoin Rainbow Price Chart Indicator. This really shows you a depiction of all of the high top offs that we saw during the Bitcoin bull cycle. So for example, what we're currently seeing here is that 2024 range. We're hovering around that green zone here, which is more of like the accumulate still cheap zone here. We passed the buy zone here, but we're at that accumulation phase. It's still cheap. A lot of people are buying Bitcoin still. I think that we still haven't gone beyond that yellow range, which is HODL. And then, we'll start getting into the orange phase of like FOMO intensifies. Is this a bubble? And then possibly get into that red zone range, which is like that maximum bubble territory. So just looking at that, that 2020 time frame, we saw it get to that orange time point in 2018. We saw that high RSI kick in, and just scaling back to 2014, we saw it run up significantly as well, especially during that time. The price was a lot lower. So we have to factor that in. We won't likely see that rocket fuel type of run up because the price of Bitcoin has already appreciated to the point where it surpassed that 100K marker. Current state, Bitcoin at sub 93,000. I think that we're just in that accumulation phase, current state right now. But let's just take a look at the overall technical analysis of Bitcoin here. So I have two lines drawn. Resistance here, which was the all-time high that was achieved back about 2 weeks ago, December 17, where we topped off at 108, and it's been on a descending resistance here with the price of Bitcoin. I have a line drawn at the support here. We may get down below that 88,000, but who knows? I think that we're in that consolidation phase, and come the time points of like January 20th, I think the events leading up to the inauguration, we may start seeing consolidation and a gradual increase, or even a reverse V shape pushing up to a 120,000, 130,000 is my perspective with the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't going away. The amount of available Bitcoins out there, that's limited supply, and it's only going to be a matter of time when Bitcoin becomes depleted, which is why I think that this is really going to be a paradigm shift, devaluing the dollar as well as devaluing gold. And for those reasons, Bitcoin is really going to be the king of the commodities around the global markets. So that's my perspective with Bitcoin, given the fact that we may potentially see that 120, $130,000 breakthrough zone as we head into the new year here. So let's start taking a look at the overall technicals with MSTR here. So I wanted to share with you uh, this chart here, which is a reflection of the MSTR stock seasonality, to give you an overall assessment of the price movements across previous years, to give you a gauge if there are repeating trends occurring on an annual basis. So what we see in the earliest year is in red, which is 2019. So not much here. We just saw like a 10% gain. And then the following year in green was 2020. We saw a pretty good performance, 169% 2020, and then followed by 2021 in purple, 28%. So those 3 years we saw consistent gains across the board on those 3 years. Let's take a look at 2021. So 2021, 28%, 2022 we see a huge drop off of like 75%. And the fact that it dropped by 75%, I think that it really just nets out this last 3 years here because even though we see high percentages here, but if the current year you drop by that much, you basically wipe out all of your profits. So 2022 was a huge underperformance year. But you see here, seeing the next year, 2023, it bounced up 335%, which is great work here by MSTR overperformance as we see, followed by the current year, 2024, even though we saw that run up to like 600%, like early December timeframe or late November. Here we see a gain of like 381%. So fairly consistent with what we saw in the prior year. So I just wanted to highlight that the current year's performance may not necessarily reflect how the future performance would be, but you do see some degree of seasonality here. We see some consecutive years where it's performed, but the question is, will we see that again in the following year? I mean, we saw that with 2019, 2020, 2021, what we see here, right? All in the positive zone, but then that followed by a negative year. Now, the question is, given the fact that we have two consecutive positive years, are we going to see another consecutive positive year, or are we going to see that negative correlation? So I think that's really good information to really assess. Let's take a look at Riot stock seasonality just to see, engage if there's any repeating trends. So just starting with 2019, we saw in red minus 35%. So huge underperforming year. But then 2020, we saw that big run up, right? 1,292% gain 2020. And then the following year, I mean, nowhere compared to that performance uh, from 2020. 2021, we saw a 35% gain. So 2020 and 2021 was positive, but the following year, 2022, we saw that huge drop off of like 85%. So that takes out a lot of the gains that were received from from the prior years, just based on the 2022 drought year. But then 2023, there was a bounce back of like 359%. However, current year, because we saw 2023 being an overperforming year, the current year, which is the year that we're in, we had a drop off of like close to 30%. So just looking at Riot's stock seasonality, just based on the historical trends that we see here with these 5 data points, it's likely to assume that if it follows these historical trends, 2025 will likely be a positive performing year. I'm suspecting that we may likely land in between the pink and the purple zone from the 35% to the 359% or even that 500%. So I'm thinking there's going to be that 3 to 5x potential run up here. So we'll get in between. To get to that green state that we saw in 2020, it's unlikely, but I do think that we will land somewhere in this mid zone here, just based on Riot's underperformance. And that's why I think Riot is a significantly undervalued play right now, just looking at current technicals. Let's just look more at, price forecasts for Riot here. So Riot's price targets just based on analysts' predictions based on the last 3 months. And of course, I wanted to just factor in that because these analysts are within the past 3 months, it may not necessarily reflect the appreciation of the Bitcoin price, but overall strong buy here. We have 14 analysts suggesting buy. Uh, I'm thinking that with these price forecasts here, it may be fairly conservative without the variable of Bitcoin price at the all-time high. So you have a max point of like $25 here. That would be like 127% gain. Current price, we know it's, at the, sub $11. But I do think that there's that potential for Riot to really start catapulting up with that 3 to 5x potential. Taking a look at the earnings per share here, so we know that in Q3, what was reported at minus 0.54 cents per stock, that was an underperformance compared to the estimate year. Big disparity that we saw in Q3, which is why the share price started going down. Q2 was also a similar type of result, although what was reported wasn't far off from the estimate, a difference of like 25 cents. But here we see a huge difference here with the estimate versus reported. As for Q4, I'm thinking that because the price of Bitcoin has gone up, we shall expect revenue to increase. And for those reasons, we will likely see a performance that we saw back in Q4 of 2023, where we saw better results, where the estimate was projected at minus 28, but then reported was 0.45. So I think, along with other miners, because Bitcoin price is going up, uh, return on cash flow is going to be better. And for those reasons, I think Q4 Riot will likely blow things out of the water and surprise a lot of investors. And for those reasons, we shall see the share price go up. Taking a look at the currency reported versus what was estimated here. So we saw that in Q2 of this year as well as Q3, consistent underperformance. But I think that just with all of what's going on right now with Bitcoin demand increase, I think Q4 we're going to see some better data along with the revenue here. So, an estimate of 133, I think that what's going to be reported, we're going to see that orange bar, potentially being, higher than the gray estimate for a very long time when we compare it for the multiple quarters that we see here. So I think overall, because analysts are suggesting a strong buy, I think that Riot Platforms is very undervalued. We can easily see a retest of like, $17 in January of this year alone. That's my perspective. Let's take a look at MicroStrategy here. So just looking at MSTR here, there's 9 analysts that are recommending MSTR as a buy here, and the max here is suggested for $650, which I do think that MSTR does have that potential to break through. MSTR currently is like consolidating, especially during that time when it reached that mid 500 range, and then Citron announced that news, creating puts, and then it's been, going down the last couple of weeks of trading, currently at 330. But I do think that it can bounce back up to the prior retest of 550 and then start climbing up to 650, just based on the market sentiment right now, and especially given the fact that Bitcoin hasn't really topped out yet for this current bull cycle. Overall, earnings per share here, even though we see that big disparity of what was reported in Q3, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Q4 data will be uh, presented. Along with revenue right now, I think a lot of what is dependent on the growth and performance of MSTR is the price of Bitcoin. So I think a lot of volatility is seen with a stock like MSTR because of their overall business model of hodling a huge amount of Bitcoin and relying on the price of Bitcoin to be at a current high premium value. And if and when Bitcoin price continues to go up, that's going to be reflected on MSTR's share price. So getting up to like 650 next year, there's that potential there. And just looking at that seasonality that we saw, right? At one point, it reached 3 consecutive years positive performance. Can we see another third year of positive performance? Really depends on Bitcoin, and it has that potential as well. Now, I just wanted to share with you just one article here that was released today in that crypto stocks posted weekly losses. That includes MSTR, MARA, Riot, as Bitcoin fails at 95,000. However, I do think that Bitcoin right now, it's in that consolidation phase and the events leading up to the upcoming inauguration on the 20th. We're going to see some accumulation go on, and Bitcoin will likely bounce back. I think because we ran up significantly high, just with the last couple of months, it's normal progression to see some consolidation, people taking profits. But I do think that because game theory is happening all around the world, price of Bitcoin will go up, and companies like MSTR and Riot will definitely benefit. So MSTR, I mean, just with the recent weeks, we saw the stock tumble by 9% despite even adding more Bitcoin along with Riot. I mean, on Friday, it dropped, close to about 5%, testing key support near the $10.62 simple moving average. So, is Bitcoin losing steam ahead of 2025? Even though in the short term we see that there's some degree of sell-off with Bitcoin, I think that it really depends. And if it breaks through that 88,000 barrier that I shared with you here, then, we'll be more concerned. But I think that we're still in that consolidation phase. And I think that that downward pressure, it really depends on what we're seeing based on the signals of that support level that I drew around the 88,000. So we'll see how it goes, but I think that there's going to be more movement in the positive direction with MSTR, Riot, and Bitcoin. So MSTR, I mean, although MSTR remains above its 52-week simple moving average of 172, I think investor confidence in the long-term bullish thesis behind the firm's aggressive Bitcoin acquisitions is really what's driving the market sentiment, creating that bullish signal with MSTR. So I think that because MSTR has been consolidating from like November, December, we can see that that green candlestick kick in very soon here. So with Riot, it declined, closing on Friday at like 10.99, close to that $11 threshold. So the stock is now hovering just above the 52-week moving average of $10.62, indicating possible weakness. A break below $10 could invite further selling. While that is true, I think that there's much more potential with Riot because of all of the recent news that we received. Starboard taking a big position with Riot. I think that we will likely be hearing announcement on potential business expanding into HPC AI as a consideration, tapping into the Corsicana facility to use up the remaining 600 megawatts available at the Corsicana facility and really capitalize on the service revenue that one can charge clients for AI cloud-based service. So there you have it. I hope that my overall video gave you a comparison analysis between MSTR, Riot, and Bitcoin, or is this a good proxy to consider both stocks? But overall, if I were to put my biggest bang for my buck to add value in the year 2025, I would put that on Riot Platform because of the seasonality analysis that we saw, where the current year, if it's underperforming, I think the future year will indicate likely overperformance. And that's based on the last couple of data points that we saw with the last 6 years. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate you subscribing to All I See Is W. Add a comment, like this video, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts and questions are. Thank you.